All right, so we are here today with Prasad Kurup. He's an alumnus of SPJIMR, which is SPJIMR Institute of Management Research. As you would know, it's part of Bharati Vidya Bhavan. And Prasad Kurup is also good friends. I'm looking forward to chatting with you. Currently, Vice President and Senior Partner for Asia Pacific Data and Technology Transformation at IBM Consulting. So welcome, Prasad, here, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Ratika.
All right, so let's just start with the first question that we have for you today, which is, as a leader, how do you spot potential in your team?
Okay, so let me try and take a bit of a step back on that one, because you'll realize the context from where I come in is a bit different from what maybe traditional product companies come in, right? I'm in the services company. IBM, per se, a large company dealing with hundreds of thousands of teams. Our own team goes into a few thousands, etc. So it is a people business, right? And for us, getting the right potential and grooming them is far more critical. So at any point of time, the lens is always that of spotting both the positives and the negatives of every practitioner. Fundamentally, I always believe in consulting, every meeting is a critical meeting. Every discussion needs to be important. And every deliverable needs to be client-centric out there. Two or three areas that I look for when it comes to identifying potential. The very fundamental is between choosing somebody who's brilliant vis-a-vis somebody who's got a great attitude. Everything else being equal. In general, it's the attitude that takes over content. I see that work. I see that work because it might be a great individual from a content standpoint, but it also doesn't take too long to vitiate the environment, the team culture, and the bonhomie that is much required for succeeding on an engagement, which typically is a team project for us and the client out there. So that's attitude number one. Number two is from a communication standpoint. I mean, we are in the client servicing business, so it's extremely important to look at potential from a communication standpoint. I mean, I just don't mean verbal communication, but written, spoken, the general way the consultant is presenting himself or herself at every discussion out there. That's the second point. The third point, and this is where I guess my own experience and my own learning has shifted over the period of years. I've seen different people emerge in different times as being strong potential. Good old days, a couple of decades back, more or less the type of engagement we would do would be very, very homogeneous, very repetitive, etc. And therefore, you would find a very difficult or a very dangerous trait of one set of individuals standing out consistently over others, time over time, repetitive of prevalence. And that's somewhere I realized while that team was good, they didn't feel too challenged out there. Cut to the current scenario where every interaction is different, the quality and the variety of interaction is so different that I have seen different people emerge as a top potential and a top performer in different scenarios. I'll take a very simple example. We do both advisory and non-advisory projects. And in one of the meetings that went south, the question was, who stands up and takes accountability? And this was during the client discussion. And lo and behold, one who I thought was possibly a more introvert kind of a person stand up on this and look, this is my problem. Give me 24 hours and I'll fix it. That for me was a complete eye-opener. I mean, I literally got goosebumps when this guy stood up out there and said, look, I genuinely own up for it and give me 24 hours and fix it. Well, and there was that, that dangerous 10-second pause when everyone were looking at each other. And this guy just stands up and says, look, it's my, I thought that brought the true character in. Okay, so he actually gets onto what I call the positive radar more often than not. And I'll give you another instance that happened again a couple of months back. In a client presentation, obviously, we may not be able to answer all the questions. And there is this famous parking lot that we always use in our jargon. Okay, we don't know, put it in the parking lot. And just to move the discussion forward, we put a couple of questions in the parking lot, which we could sense that the customer was not too happy about it. And while we did that and we moved on, the person, the consultant who was doing it, young, bright, fresh consultant who had little experience actually, she actually was, I could see from the corner of my eye, she was not too happy about about putting it in the parking lot, and we moved on. And she was actually sitting a few chairs behind, voraciously typing out something. So I actually was getting a bit irritated when in the midst of a meeting that why is she kind of getting typed out there. After about half an hour, she comes back and says, look, those 2 questions you asked, I've got my answers ready. Can I come back and plug in my machine and show you out there? That for me was true character. So, so for me, it's every day is a discovery process. Every day is a learning process. And I guess that is the nature of the environment that we all live in. So everyone who's good can rejoice for that particular day. Somebody who's not too bad can feel good about the fact that the next day will be his or hers out there. So it's an ongoing process, but in general, if I were to pick up 2 or 3 things, I would say attitude, I would pick up strong communication and great team spirit.
So as I see, is you're basically betting on the person, right? What kind of a person shows up, what kind of how they present themselves, and how can a personal or professional be that person that you're looking for? Is there some things they can do?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so this is this is my our benefit of experience of having traversed time of last 2 decades in the consulting business, 2.5 decades of consulting business. The relevance of something that has been learned today, okay, at best maybe something which I learned maybe let's say 2.5 or 3 decades back, was possibly the shelf life of that learning was maybe 10 years. Okay, with every passing 5 years, I believe the shelf life actually is dropping significantly to such an extent that I believe what is taught and learned by me today, or maybe any good professional, is possibly valid for not more than 2 to 3 years. That has become the shelf life of the learning. So the next area that I would look at is the ability of the individual to keep learning, because the environment is going to keep changing. So if somebody who is fixated on the same knowledge that he or she used a few years back, vis-a-vis somebody who actually keeps themselves abreast of what is happening. So the learning quotient becomes phenomenally important when you are in a client service industry. So that's the other part I would bring up. The second element, and this is about, I remember one of the interviews I saw with Indra Nui actually. This is a few years back, and I mean, one point that she made those days, and obviously I had my own version about it, but I thought she articulated it quite well, was the fact that the world and the environment is so complex, whether it is geopolitics, whether it is economics, whether the whole VUCA environment is so ever changing, that you need managers who can manage this complexity and ambiguity far better than the average managers. I mean, so if you're a good manager or a great manager, you actually do a better job of handling ambiguity and complexity far better than the others. So whether it is a supply chain risk, whether it is a financial risk, whether it's a political risk, you name it. People who are far adept at managing this better are the ones who I see who have a higher probability of success out there. So to net it out, I would say 2 things, right? The learning coefficient and the ability to handle complexity and ambiguity.
So you mentioned that it's not really the knowledge and skills you come in with. They'll get outdated very soon. I think as we also see in our college, I think people who are able to have the right skills of doing research or understanding, finding out the interconnections, looking at those whispers of new trends coming in, and then keeping up and making the effort to learn and relearn. I think that's what we're also kind of looking at. So maybe, I could ask the next question, because it's perfect segue right now, is do you think professionals who are, 5+, 10+, or maybe more years into the industry, do you think there's a space for going into an executive management program?
Okay, I'm going to kind of go back in time, right? I mean, trust me, when I finished my engineering, I had no intentions of doing any MBA. I thought life was done, look for the target companies, settle in for 40 years. And I knew if I survived 40 years, you'd be reasonably well settled in life out there. What triggered me that time was sheer peer pressure. I mean, my friends around me, my colleagues, etc., were moving around and running into an MBA institute. And that was the only reason why I said, look, I can't be left alone and let me jump into one. And when I kind of now look at the journey in hindsight, I mean, was that the right thing to do? I would say absolutely. I mean, any day I would relive the same journey and take the same decisions out there. Now let me put some method to the madness. I mean, what happened to be an accidental choice and an accidental journey for me. I guess it's more scientific these days. If you ask me to jump into, I would say a relearning and a refresh program. What it does is there are 2 ways to approach learning. I mean, one is the experiential learning you get on the job. you observe, you learn. And these days, the avenues of learning platforms are so rich that there's no reason why you can't keep yourself upgraded to any media. I mean, whether it's going back to an institute, whether it's going back to an online media, whether it is to any other option that is there. I guess if I were to net down 2 or 3 things that possibly impacted me personally, and which I still live as possibly one of my I cherish as my experience, was the whole ability to get into an ambiguous problem. I think most of us come with an engineering background, and for engineers, it's a very definitive problem. Okay, in fact, this is what I was telling my client, who said, "Look, how can you have bugs in the software?" I said, "Look, I mean, and I can imagine, in the automotive world, I would go with a Six Sigma plus kind of a quality system. Unfortunately, the software doesn't work that way. I mean, there's got to be the ability to kind of live with upgrades and so on and so forth." But coming back to this point about what the MBA curriculum did for me was, with all the kind of case studies, which I used to kind of not really understand why we're doing it, but eventually it kind of got into the system so much that whole value and the ability to debate and discuss a case and take away not just the 1 or 2 key outputs, but to appreciate and genuinely pen down different perspectives that each one brought to the table, is something that we even still relive today in the professional life. I think so. Barring the technical learnings, etc., that I went through today, when a problem is thrown at us, okay, why is a particular business performance not up to the mark? Revenue is dipping. What do you think about it? And it is possibly the same ability to get a team together. Let's get to the root cause. What do you think are the problems? Right from, let's say a customer satisfaction issue to an inventory availability issue to possibly even a change management issue. I don't think I would have ever thought about that without a pre-MBA days. So for me, the biggest value learning has been the fact that I was able to interact with very diverse set of people out there. Now, to your second point, I mean, does it make sense to do it after 5 years? I thought the folks who are working and who have worked in the industry in whatever capacity they have are able to provide a far more practical set of problems to solve, rather than I guess some of the folks who didn't have that luxury of experience, as I call it. So the challenges were very different. More importantly, where I saw I still see people with experience coming out better, is the ability to come out with a solution that is far more practical. So if I were to kind of grade typical recommendations on a simple 2x2 plot, I would invariably find that people who have come with experience give me something that I can do here and now, because somewhere the psyche of a CEO is, look, tell me what can I do right now, and eventually go on to kind of get the buy-in and move out there. So those are the 2 or 3 reasons I can think of as we speak of, if anyone is considering of getting back to institute and getting back to reliving those college days. And I can tell you, it is fun, it is learning, and I guess something that you will live and cherish for a long time.
Yeah, I think you're right. So yeah, anyway, our campus is very vibrant. So even when I would echo your thoughts that we are in class, people who have work experience have a very different way of looking at the problems, and one is the entry level, what kind of thoughts they bring in, but I think what they take away from the classroom also, how they think, how they analyze the situation, how do they recommend, how to extrapolate. I think that's a little different. So yes, just allow me to ask you last question. So you said it was fun and you enjoyed learning from your peers. So Prasad, did you change in your MBA journey? How did you change as a person? I mean, we talked about as a professional. So
I think if I were to put on one value add, I mean, because we're having this discussion, is MBA taught me how to keep changing, to be honest. So while MBA did change me as a person, but if I were to look at there's a one single mantra that I would say is, it taught me how to keep changing. I mean, the days again, we began with doing consulting with BPR days, then moving on to ERP, moving on to optimization, moving on to today, at any point of time, and if you look at some of our colleagues in the industry, all of them are possibly handling something very, very contemporary. And I guess that is only possible if mentally and physically and technically one is able to adapt change. There is no other. I guess if that's one reason I would think of as something that is working better than the others in that sense out there. So and that is a journey that all of us will need to kind of also be clear about, because all of us have a professional journey of what I call 30 years plus. And I mean, in my discussions, where I tell the new company professionals that, look, try and break your career into 3 segments, right? The first 1/3 is where you're learning, you're in the weeds, you're acquiring skills, you're knowing the ways around, etc. The second 1/3, okay, is where you're contributing all that learning back to the organization, shaping new things, taking bold decisions, being a risk taker, etc. The last 1/3 is about clearing the way for the next one, for the fresh 1/3 to come and make their impact out there. And that's where you kind of do a bit of a give back professionally out there. I mean, so in all this, what is constant is that you have to change yourself as a professional out there. And if there's one platform that forced me personally to change from my very hardened black and white outlook to life was, I guess, those trimesters in the Bhavan's campus, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure. Actually, I really enjoyed what you said. I think it's very powerful. The 3 stages a professional would go through. I really hadn't thought of it that way. So that was really nice. Thank you so much. And I must say, it's been such a pleasure. You're such an involved, one of our notable alumni. You come and mentor students, and you interact with them, and they really, really benefit from your presence on campus. So first of all, thank you for that. And thank you for agreeing with us to be with us today. I'm done. So
it's always a learning process. Trust me, for every coaching session, I get more out of it than possibly what I give to the students. So it's always more a beneficial process for me as much as I think I contribute. But thanks for having me, Ratika. Great talking to you.
On that note, thank you so much. And those who are watching, I hope you found some inspiring thoughts, and focus also on your professional growth. And if you think there is a place for intervention, do reach out, upgrade your skills, knowledge. And on that note, bye guys. Thank you again.